Our final guest writes for kids, but has also worked as a public radio reporter, a high school teacher, a bartender, and on a train in Alaska. She has an MFA from the Vermont College of Fine Arts and teaches writing to kids in Chicago public schools with the theater company Barrel of Monkeys. Excuse me. Her debut middle grade novel, The Mortification of Fovea Munson, is on shelves now, including signed copies right down the street at Women and Children First. Please welcome Winn Heider.
Thanks.
There we go.
I'm going to jump in a little bit here. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of a background on the first part here. So this is my middle grade cadaver lab book, which I started writing shortly after I began working at a cadaver lab. And I thought, this is perfect for children. Generally speaking, my main character, Fovea, she's 12 years old. Her camp plans fall through for the summer, and she has to spend the summer working at her parents' storefront cadaver lab. It's a teaching. It's Chicago. She has. So it's a teaching lab. On her very first day, she winds up walking in the back, and there are 3 defrosting heads, and they really need a favor from her. So that's her first day, and then also right before school ended, she had this big falling out with her best friend M. A small thing about the lab. So the heads are defrosting because there's a giant freezer in the lab that all of the body parts are kept in until they're needed and subsequently defrosted. And that's a good face. All right. So this is her first day. Also, there was a creepy cremator who wandered in. She's just had a really bad first day at the cadaver lab. The last thing I needed that night was Grandma Van. So, of course, there we were. My mom, my dad, and I making our usual dinner time trek into the maroon velvet lobby of the Swan Song Retirement Village apartment building. The Swan Song is 6 blocks from the building we live in, meaning we spend way too much time over there. It's an old-fashioned place and has both pros and cons. The really nice part is that it's on the lake, so there are beautiful views. The bummer part is that over every window is a cement demon swan emerging from the brick and stuck in mid-flight. So every time you look out of a window at the great view, your first thought is actually that something terrifying is about to crash in through the glass at you. It's even creepier from the outside. Like the whole building is going to dissolve into those swans, and they're probably going to peck you to death, or if you're lucky, smother you quickly with their icky cement feathers. Those blank cement eyes are the worst. The ownership really embraced it, though, apparently making sure there were as many demon swans on the inside as there were on the outside. The indoor ones were wall-to-wall and upholstered from the giant gray swan frowning in the middle of the maroon lobby carpeting to the nightmare-y inch-sized versions on the velvety maroon drapes and the decorative armchairs. Everything matched in the most horrific of ways. It was the perfect building for Grandma Van. She lived on the 8th floor, so we hopped on the ancient elevator and rode up slowly. It was cramped in there, even with just the 3 of us, and the walls were plastered with notices of events going on in the Swan Song. As the flyers indicated, every single club, game night, and singing group had been organized by Julia Klinger, who was inconveniently my grandmother's arch nemesis. She lived 1 floor up, and though I'd never met her, she was apparently out to get Grandma Van. My grandmother used to be the boss of the Filipino part of the nursing home, and Julia ran the Armenian part. And ever since Julia took over the social calendar for the entire building, Grandma Van refused to do anything even remotely social, including eat with the old people, which was why we've been having dinner over there every night for the last 5 weeks. The elevator banged, and we walked down the long hallway to her door. It It was the one with the enormous portrait of Henry VIII on it. A man who knew what he wanted, Grandma Van always said it. Like her hero, my grandmother knew what she wanted. Almost every one of our dinner time conversations revolved around how much Grandma Van looked forward to her imminent demise. She planned out her funeral about a million different ways, and every time it changed, she'd tell me my role. You'll lead a procession holding a lit candle shaped like my face. It'll be a cocktail party, and you'll be walking around with my ashes on top of an upside-down pineapple cake. I've rented a flock of swans from the Wildlife Center. It'll be my tribute to the swan song. You can herd swans, right? I lived in fear of her death, and it didn't help that, according to her, it might happen at any moment. We reached Henry VIII, who snarled at us. My mom knocked, and after a minute, we heard the electric hum of the scooter moving closer to the door. A few locks turned, and the door opened several inches. A single eye, magnified by a pair of drugstore eyeglasses, peered out suspiciously. The eyeglasses just barely fought off a mountain of thick purple-black hair that threatened to crush them. Grandma Van did the dye job herself. Who are you people? My dad sighed and shifted the dish of chicken adobo to the other hand. Just kidding, Grandma Van said. Her gravelly voice was exactly how I imagined all the concrete swans sounded when they discussed who they were going to swarm next. She grunted, swan-like, and looked past me. No new friends yet, huh? Flap, flap, flap. I shrugged, wishing I'd never brought him over. It had only been like 3 times, but that was enough. Grandma Van knew where your weak spots were. It was her gift, along with funeral planning. She turned back to my parents. What'd you bring? My dad peeled back the aluminum foil. Chicken adobo, what a surprise. Then, keeping a disappointed eye on us, she hit reverse on her scooter, backing all the way up into her apartment. There was a wire basket attached to the front where she normally kept her enormous purse and a box of crackers, and scraped a long, ugly line in the plaster of the wall as she went. When she'd gone back as far as she could, she turned the motorized chair and drove into the living room, leaving a few crumbles of plaster in her wake. From around the corner, we heard her say, "Kicking the bucket never looked so good." Nobody said much over dinner. My parents tried to fake some cheerfulness, but it wasn't very convincing. Fovia had her first shift at the lab. Tell your grandmother all about it, Fo. Grandma Van sighed deeply and helped herself to some chicken. There was nothing I wanted to tell anyone about my day, least of all Grandma Van, whose depression might actually get depressed if I mentioned that death was iffy. There's a real fish now, I said. He spent a lot of time in the castle today. I scooped some chicken for myself and then examined it, remembering the possibility that it had spent some time in the body freezer. I mushed it with my fork. It looked normal, but if I was going to eat it, I needed to be certain. Where did this come from? Oh, I made it, my dad said distractedly. Grandma Van sighed again. Pretending to be Filipino does not fool the chicken, she muttered. I helped a little, said my mom. Grandma Van eyed her. Helped? You can't even make ice water. Dad, I said, after you made the chicken, since then, where has the chicken been living? In the freezer, he said, frowning. In the kitchen freezer? As opposed to... All right, I was convinced. Never mind. Please pass the pepper. There was a pause. Speaking of pepper, said Grandma Van, did you people know that Julia petitioned the management to replace all the pepper grinders with shakers? So now instead of twisting the knob to get your pepper, you just dump the stuff out on your plate? It's like she's rewarding everybody who has arthritis. Nobody works for anything around here anymore. When I go belly up, I'm leaving some money to this place, but only on the condition that they go back to the grinders. On the way out after dinner, my mom gave Grandma Van a hug. Maybe you should try something new, Mom, she said. Maybe you've been holed up here too long, maybe you'd like an activity. Bite your tongue, my grandmother snapped back. As long as Julia's running things, I am activity AWOL. Even, Bingo! A look from my grandmother could kill a cockroach from 8 feet away. I'll be joining the majority soon enough, she said. Soon enough. We were all silent. That means I'll be dead, babies.